You created that problem. The problem with the perk package is that there is a flow of perks. So why are you creating a problem or exacerbating a problem that was already solved in the past? They are looking for such a big brain way to solve a problem when you simply don't need it. Alright, what's going on everybody? Anime Ramble back with another video. Today I will be giving my overall impressions, thoughts, and feedback on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2K22. Now, you saw the little intro clip. I'm going to get into it later. This might be considered a rant. It definitely isn't going to be all praise and high water. But in the time it took for me to really gather all my information about this video and flesh out my thoughts, Infinity Ward came out with a statement regarding their feedback to week 1 feedback. Okay, so we're going to go over that right now. I'm going to put the little paragraphs that they put up on the screen because we're going to break this shit down. And this is a reason why game developer studios don't give out feedback to this level of degree. Because you have people in the community that will call them out on their shit for not knowing what the fuck that they're talking about. So let's break this shit down. So the first part of this paragraph, they're talking about the minimap, right? They come out and they say, currently in the Modern Warfare 2 beta, we only show enemy players' dots when a UAV is active. The design reason is that we do not want to punish players for firing their weapons. We also want players to actively search out the origin of a gunshot versus just traveling directly to where the dot is on the minimap. We continue to gather feedback on how the game is playing in regards to this topic. Do you hear the hypocrisy? Do you hear the contradictory statements that come out in this report that they just gave us? Listen to what they just said, right? The design reasons that we do not want to punish players for firing their weapon. Does nobody remember the Fog of War system from Black Ops 4? Let me read y'all this paragraph from Treyarch back with Call of Duty Black Ops 4 and the reason why they chose to change the minimap system. They came out and they said, a brand new minimap system debuts in Call of Duty Black Ops 4 multiplayer, which Treyarch is calling Fog of War. With the new minimap system, what happens on the entire map is not available to you. What happens on the entire map is not available to you. When you move around, you see only what happens in a certain radius around you. The radius is limited to a certain distance and you see the map adjust as you move around in real time. The rest of the map is showing just the map outline, not what happens over there. The way someone shows up on the map is if they shoot. If an enemy player shoots their weapon, their own Fog of War will show up on the minimap. The Fog of War has a very limited radius. Players can see where the shot comes from and what happens around them on the minimap for a certain amount of time. Treyarch's decision behind this is creating a game where communication and teamwork is key. Players have to talk to each other to know what's happening at a different location on the map and to know where to head to. It's about situational awareness, changing up how you interact with the game and with players on your team. So now you go back to what Infinity Ward was saying and how they don't want to punish players for firing their weapon. It was already solved in Black Ops 4. Right, I just read it to you. So why are you creating a problem or exacerbating a problem that was already solved in the past? Just put the Fog of War system back in. You already have Sledgehammer and Treyarch both adopting Infinity Ward's new engine that they're running the current Modern Warfare on, right? So why can't you adopt Treyarch's Black Ops 4 Fog of War system? If it's that serious, right? Meet us in the middle. You have to meet us in the middle somewhere. And the real reason people are so outraged is the fact that the problem was already solved and you're acting as if it is brand new and you are the end-all be-all savior for the Call of Duty players. And it's just not the case. Then you go on to say that you want players to actively search out the origin of a gunshot versus going directly to where the red dot is. With how impressive your sound system is, you honestly don't need the red dot. Now I know that's a little contradictory, but it's not, because the red dot needs to be there in order to tell all of the players on the other team the flow of the map, to give us some indication on where to be looking. The spawn system is already a squad spawn system, so you have to keep your head on a fucking swivel at every point of the game, and to have no direction via a dot is mind-blowing to me. And where you contradict yourself in that paragraph is by saying, well, we would rather you search out the sound versus the visual cue. How are deaf people going to play this game? If you're deaf, right, partially or completely, how are you going to play this game without anybody gifting you a UAV? I'm just keeping it real, right? They're causing problems, not just in-game problems, but they're also causing real-life problems as well. For some people. Okay? Regardless of whether or not I run to a red dot or regardless or not I have to track down the sound of a gunshot. The gun is either creating the sound that I'm running to or the gunshot is creating the dot that I'm running to. It doesn't matter which one it is. Target tracking. They go on to say that we've seen some feedback that it is hard to track targets once you get into a firefight. We agree that this is an issue, and we have some changes incoming to reduce muzzle smoke opacity and to increase the visibility of the muzzle flash to help engage someone who is firing at you. These changes should help with tracking your opponent in combat. Why is muzzle flash an issue almost every single year? You know what I mean? Exclusive Ace just dropped this whole comparison between week 1 and week 2 when it comes to muzzle flashes. And yeah, thank you, but I really shouldn't be thanking you because this is an issue almost every Call of Duty title. And you would think with over 2,000-3,000 developers at Infinity Ward, apparently they play the game as they develop the game. You're telling me you have 2,000 to 3,000 people at that studio that when you're playtesting these weapons and firing them at the walls, that just much like how Exclusive Ace is doing, that y'all can't see that that's a shit ton of fucking muzzle flash? You have to wait for player feedback to realize that that is a lot of muzzle flash? Are you serious? That's all I'm gonna say on that, bro. There's no way in hell I'm gonna even entertain that anymore. There's no, bruh, come on, no. They go on, we are also investigating more ways to visually differentiate enemies and friendlies outside of the standard nameplates above heads of the opposing players. We will also be trying a few changes in week 2. More on this in the later week. Black Ops 4, Treyarch, red lights on enemy players' shoulders, blue or green lights on friendly shoulders. It could be that easy, right? It could be that easy. But no, they have to experiment and test new ways of doing something. You know, Infinity Ward gives me, you remember back in like school, you had somebody who was so smart, but they just lacked any sense of common sense at all. Like, you know, 5.0 GPA, 4.8 Ivy League potential, but common sense just escaped them. That's this whole studio. They are looking for such a big brain way to solve a problem when you simply don't need it. They go on. They talk about the user interface. We've seen the feedback surrounding user. Okay, I'm not going to read that paragraph. The user interface is complicated, but it's not impossible to navigate. It's just, again, a little bit contradictory because they make this game for casual players. They cater to noobs. They cater to new players, younger players, yet they make this RPG, MMO-esque type of user interface system. It's not necessarily complicated. It's just convoluted, unnecessary, difficult, time-consuming. I mean, you're not going to get me to believe that flicking through weapons on this user interface is easier than any other Call of Duty in the past. I mean, in the past, they were just a straight line, a straight horizontal line, just boom, 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 gun, gun, gun. Here, you got a up, down, left, right, analog stick, circle, circle, L1. I feel like I'm playing Street Fighter, okay? I feel like I'm in a pre-game lobby for Tekken. Just simplify the user interface. Perk System, this is a hot topic. Let's dive into it because, again, God Complex Infinity Ward, it is, we have got to check them because it's creating problems that actually don't need to exist, making something more difficult than what it needs to be. They go on to say about perks. We've seen varied feedback on the perk package system. Some players love it, others feel it's an unnecessary departure from the original system. We feel it's a nice shakeup to how perks work and to the general progression of a match. We also balance the ultimate perks to be more powerful as you will earn them later in the match. We'll continue testing throughout beta weekend 2, including drastically accelerating the earn rate of these to see how players react. Our goal remains improving the flow of all perks ahead of launch. You see the problem they created? No other Call of Duty has ever done this before, but honestly we shouldn't expect anything less from Infinity Ward. Do you remember Call of Duty Ghost? Do you remember the perk system in Call of Duty Ghost? Infinity Ward has never been able to show us that they have been able to balance perks. Infinite Warfare, you could make a slight argument, very slight argument, but they were in no way balanced. The problem that Infinity Ward is creating here is that now with this current perk package system, there needs to be a flow of perks. You have to balance the flow just right. In the past, there was no need for flow. You had your 3 perks at the beginning, and that was it. There was no need for a flow. Now you have to have a need for a balancing of the perks because you created that problem. The problem with the perk package is that there is a flow of perks. The UAV has always been arguably one of the strongest kill streaks in the game. I've never actually understood why everybody in a lobby doesn't run Ghost, but for whatever reason, not everybody does. Okay? You have made it from an S tier perk to a God tier perk. Because the very first team to get a UAV goes on a fucking rampage. Because it's again, like what I said at the beginning of this video, it's almost not needed. You almost don't need it because the sound system is that fucking good. So when you do give us a UAV on top of the sound systems, you can pre-fire well before they even know that you're there. Furthermore, all the ultimate perks aren't really ultimate, right? Some of these things are like lackluster. Ghost may be the only one that I see that actually has an ultimate value. They go on in this paragraph to mention Dead Silence. They say that Dead Silence is another hot topic, as many players have expressed that they would like to see it return as a perk instead of a field upgrade. We believe it is important to the game health that rushers are not able to move at high speeds without consequences. Dead Silence as a field upgrade creates a balance between freedom of movement and predictability of combat. No, it does not. First thing, they say that we believe that it is important to the game's health that rushers not be able to move at high speeds without consequences. The consequence at moving at a high speed in an Infinity Ward game is that you will always have a line of sight aimed at you. Do y'all remember the street crossing video? That's the consequence of a rusher trying to cross the fucking street. There are 30 lines of sight at all time. Another consequence of being a rusher: your footsteps have never actually always been silent. There's always a little bit of sound. I could go back to Cold War right now and throw Ninja on a class, run into a lobby. I can still hear the pitter-patter of my own footsteps. If you actually listen, you can hear that your footsteps are not actually quiet. So this notion that rushers run around without penalty all the time is nonsense to me. There's always a little bit of consequence to being a rusher. The fact that you have to adjust from rushing, getting your gun up, aiming down your sight, those seconds in between, that's a penalty. You're not immediately ready for a combat situation if you're running around the map. If anything, Infinity Ward's Call of Duties, especially Modern Warfare 2K19 and Modern Warfare 2K22, have shown us what the negative implications are to not having Ninja as a perk. Nobody moves around the maps. Look at the maps that we're playing now. You gotta think, these are arguably some of the smallest maps we're gonna have at base launch of the game. Same thing happened in Modern Warfare 2K19, right? Azir Cave, Hackney Yard, Gunrunner, they weren't loved by the fans, but they were small enough and they appeased us, right? But once base game of Modern Warfare 2K19 dropped, Piccadilly, Ramaza, St. Petrograd, Euphrates Bridge, Arklov Peak, giant, massive, oversized maps that we had to deal with. The penalty for rushing has always been your rushing. Furthermore, they say that it creates a balance of freedom of movement and predictability of combat. You got one thing right, it does create predictability of combat, because the best way to play the game is to not move. It doesn't create freedom of movement because if you move, you're penalized. They've already stated, with coming out with this whole article thing, they've already stated that their intentions were to nerf rushers, and they have done just that. And this is worse than what it was in 2K19. Rushers are nerfed more here than they were then, so they felt like they didn't do a good enough job back then. They go on to talk about footsteps and how in week 1 of the beta, footsteps were very high. Yes, they were. They're still high. You haven't changed them. It doesn't matter how high or low they are. Unless you're prepared to drop the footstep audio to like Cold War with Ninja on as the base footsteps, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. This problem is only compounded on top of the fact that in the year 2022, headsets have gotten absolutely ridiculous. Even if, and that's why I mentioned earlier, even if I played Cold War and had Ninja on, you can still hear your footsteps, because headsets are just that fucking powerful nowadays. You shouldn't be able to hear somebody this clearly in this type of game where movement is this heavy. Okay, I legitimately get headaches playing the game because I'm constantly hearing my loud footsteps, my teammates' loud footsteps, the enemy player's loud footsteps. I have these loud gunshots ringing off my ear. The announcer is talking every fucking time, and then you have your own player doing like self-commentary, doing like call-outs that nobody fucking cares about because nobody's gonna go to where you're calling that shit out. Furthermore, on the whole topic of communication, nobody talks in this game. Infinity Ward Call of Duties have to be some of the most non-speaking games, Because all of your energy, all of your focus has to be to listening for the enemy players at all times. There is no differentiating the sounds of enemy players' footsteps and your teammates' footsteps on top of your own footsteps. There is none of that. It's just feet going at all times of the fucking match. Explosions going off, gunshots ringing out, call-outs going out. But nobody with a microphone can say anything because everybody's focus is to listening. Oh shit, I can't see the fucking nameplate. Let me pull the trigger anyway. Oh nope, that's a teammate. Oh shit, I just got shot in the back because the person camping down the hall wasn't moving, but the minute I pull the trigger because I think the teammate's an enemy, I get shot. Problems that they create. The last thing was about slides. They took out slide canceling. It is what it is. I used it when it was in the game. Now that it's not in the game, I don't use it. I'm pretty much back to drop shotting, but that's not enough. It's not enough. There needs to be an alternative. There needs to be something else that's viable. Slide canceling was viable. If it wasn't, nobody would have did it. Just like dolphin diving back in the day. Yeah, it was fun, haha, but no one actually used it for real. Drop shotting was viable in a combat situation. Slide canceling was viable in a combat situation to get somebody out of a corner that they were sitting in. Now you slide slow, you turn slow, everything's slow. Jeez, look, I've rambled on long enough. That is my feedback. Hopefully they bring back the fog of war system. That was the big takeaway from this video. They need to put the perk system back to how it was. I just don't think that they play their own fucking game. Again, going back to what Exclusive Ace talked about, the whole them reducing muzzle flash, you know, hey, congratulations, thank you, but I mean, did you really need us to make a YouTube video about that for you to see it? 2,000-3,000 people at a studio. Y'all apparently play your own game. If you played your own game, the muzzle flash would have irritated you before the beta even came out. It would never have been an issue that needed to have a video made about it. But because you don't, that's all I got, y'all. Y'all, if you are new, if you made it to the end, thank you. If you're new, go post ultra and smash the subscribe button. Let me know you rock with the content that I put out on the channel. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video. Comment on the video your thoughts about what you think is going on, how you think this problem is going to be resolved. That's a trick question because we're talking about Infinity Ward here. The problem is not going to be resolved, right? We talked about this in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019. We talked about this in Vanguard because remember, Vanguard tried to do the same shit. And they managed to have it as a perk and a field upgrade. So don't sit here and say that it can't happen, that you can't appease both worlds. And even if they wanted to leave it as an ultimate perk, just put Ninja as an ultimate perk, right? You don't have access to it at all points of the match. And you get literally what you want. You get the beginning half of the match where everybody can't hide. And you have the last end of the match where you can kind of hide. This is one of the most fucked up games of Call of Duty hide and go seek that I've ever had. I'm out.
The Fog of War, by the way, is the new mini-map and the way that works. So for those of you that are confused about that, that's what we're talking about. It works a lot differently than it did in previous Call of Duty games, but basically, as a character, you standing on the map and your teammates standing on the map, you have a small aura around your character, and if an enemy is within that aura and they're not firing their weapon, they're not shooting, they don't see you, they will still pop up as a red dot on the radar for you and the rest of your team. The same thing goes for if your teammates see somebody on the radar. If somebody fires a weapon, the fog of war will clear just a little bit in their area and their red dot will appear. If they're really far away, you'll still get a red sensor showing where someone's shooting from. If their distance from you is within that mini-map up top, of course their little red dot will appear and the fog of war will clear. It's kind of like a really cool animated thing because even after the fact that they've stopped firing, you can see for a small amount of time where they were firing from because the fog is kind of trying to gather itself back over that area.